This content is intended solely for informational and entertainment purposes. Connect the dots. Global Siege 2025, Trump, SARS, shutdowns and military escalation across the Caribbean. Welcome to the Geopolitics Update channel. Monday, November 17, 2025. The largest aircraft carrier in the United States fleet, the USS Gerald Ford, advanced into the Caribbean after leaving the Mediterranean, accompanied by its strike group under Southern Command. The maneuver was not just military, it was a calculated show of force. Fighter jets crossed the skies, bombers flew over strategic areas, and surveillance confirmed every step. Caracas was in the crosshairs, and Nicolas Maduro responded with readiness decrees, mobilizing militias and invoking independence plans. Contradictions emerged quickly. Reports indicated that Maduro considered surrender or amnesty but backed off. Washington accused drug trafficking networks, while the United Kingdom distanced itself, refusing to share maritime data. Canada hesitated. The arrival of the Ford fractured alliances and intensified the siege atmosphere. Guerrilla rhetoric surfaced, but the imbalance of power was evident. The Pentagon deployed troops to Panama's green hell jungles compared to Vietnam, training under extreme conditions. Colombia confirmed 5 soldiers missing near the Venezuelan border. Latin American air forces sought adaptation, acquiring runway systems for F-16 fighters. The stage was set for confrontation, but the disparity was brutal. Meanwhile, the United States faced the longest government shutdown in history. More than 2,700 flights were cancelled, air traffic controllers went unpaid, and services were paralyzed. The Senate voted 60-40 to end the deadlock, the House debated, and President Donald Trump prepared to sign. Markets reacted, the dollar fell, stocks hit record highs. The narrative of a restored republic re-emerged, contrasting with the old corporate order. Veterans Day speeches echoed. Trump honored those who fought in past wars, linking them to the current struggle. He proclaimed America's enduring strength, the most powerful nation on earth. Symbolism merged with strategy, and veterans became anchors of legitimacy. International fissures widened. Syria reopened its embassy in Washington after 11 years, and Trump welcomed its leader as an ally. Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira arrived in Canada for talks with Marco Rubio. Unexpected alignments emerged, redrawing the Middle East and Latin America. The narrative fused military escalation, economic populism, and institutional chaos. Aircraft carriers, shutdown votes, jungle training, and fractured alliances converged. The siege is real. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress opened an investigation into J.P. Morgan Chase, uncovering connections with Brazilian banks. Financial scandals multiplied, and corporations were put under scrutiny. At the local level, a Florida sheriff demolished homes tied to drug trafficking, using heavy machinery to destroy seized stockpiles. The message was clear: zero tolerance. Colombian President Gustavo Petro accused Washington of using spy software to monitor citizens, denouncing CIA violations. He warned that conflict was approaching South America. Leaks revealed blueprints of British nuclear aircraft, exposing vulnerabilities in Russian defenses. At the same time, a B-52H bomber was seen testing a new nuclear missile, modern, luminous, and ready for deployment. Tragedies also marked the period. A plane crashed in Georgia with 20 people on board. Another, in Coral Springs, Florida, carrying humanitarian aid to Jamaica after a hurricane, ended in disaster. In South Asia, Pakistani tanks were spotted near Lahore, reigniting tensions with India after attacks in New Delhi. The border once again became a stage for military movements. The world seemed to be heading toward conflict. Hostile actors sought to fuel wars, but their power was no longer the same. What remained was the narrative, as regimes faced internal and external pressures. Brazil, too, was being pulled into this wave of destabilization. The USS Gerald Ford became the centerpiece of the international narrative as it entered the Caribbean. Its presence was accompanied by B-52 bombers and ground forces on alert. The White House spokesperson called an urgent press briefing, while Nicolas Maduro declared maximum alert and mobilized Bolivarian militias. The official discourse spoke of independence and anti-narcotics efforts, but the reality was rising tension. Washington intensified operations, blaming Maduro for narco boat attacks. Sources suggested he considered surrender but backed off. The contradiction fueled rumors of an imminent strike. The Ford, flanked by escorts and destroyers, operated under Southern Command, showcasing military might and intimidating adversaries. The Venezuelan flag on the uniform of an American sergeant aboard the carrier symbolized direct provocation. Maduro raised the national military alert level, implementing the upper phase of the independence plan. Full arsenal on standby, land, sea, and air resources mobilized, along with rocket systems and militias. The rhetoric of resistance clashed with the imbalance of power. The Caribbean had become a theater of confrontation. Meanwhile, the American shutdown remained the longest in history. The House passed a narrow vote, 213 to 209, to end the paralysis. The Senate moved forward, and Donald Trump prepared to sign the bill. Expectations pointed to an immediate reopening, but official confirmation had yet to be released. Markets responded with optimism, dollar down, stocks up. The Secretary of Defense issued a direct warning to cartels, do not board ships, or they will be destroyed. The message was clear, leaving no room for ambiguity. The external military siege was now joined by an internal political siege. The narrative fused military operations, legislative deadlocks, and direct threats. Aircraft carriers, shutdowns, and independence speeches merged into a single flow. The Caribbean was no longer just a strategic sea, it was a war trench. The Trump administration released over 600 undocumented immigrants detained during an ICE operation in Chicago, as rumors blended with reports of technological breakthroughs. Elon Musk was cited in connection with Starlink and SpaceX, suggesting that global-scale communication systems were being activated. The conspiratorial narrative merged with geopolitics, and senators like Marco Rubio defended Trump against accusations of violating international law in anti-narcotics operations. Secretary Besson announced economic stimulus measures, $2,000 checks for citizens earning under $40,000 annually. The promise was framed as the beginning of a new era of prosperity. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned the United States not to escalate the conflict in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Democratic governors criticized the reopening of federal programs, accusing Congress of capitulating. The shutdown, the longest in history, was nearing its end, but political tensions remained high. House Speaker Mike Johnson dismissed emails targeting Trump as a publicity stunt by Democrats. White House spokesperson Karoline Leavitt responded, accusing opponents of fabricating hoaxes. Over 23,000 documents were reportedly ready for release, fueling expectations of major revelations. Robert Kennedy Jr. exposed alleged corruption at the CDC, claiming that 97% of vaccine panel members had failed to disclose conflicts of interest while receiving funds from pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer, Merck, and GSK. Scandals continued to pile up. Dana Williamson, former chief of staff to Gavin Newsom, was arrested by the FBI for bank and wire fraud. Parallel reports spoke of projects aimed at extending human life to 150 years, using futuristic medications and technologies. In Missouri, individuals linked to the Chinese Communist Party purchased land near a U.S. Air Force base, raising espionage concerns. Behind-the-scenes reports indicated that the U.S. Treasury was considering phasing out the penny after 2 centuries of circulation, citing production costs exceeding its face value. Sources close to the media sector suggested that the BBC faced internal crisis after being accused of altering footage of political speeches, leading to the resignation of its director. Analysts interpreted the episode as reinforcing the perception that the United Kingdom maintains historic ties to structures associated with the so-called deep state. Israel confirmed plans to build a $500 million U.S. military base near the Gaza border to house thousands of international troops. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld rules prohibiting gender changes on passports, seen as another political win for Trump. In Panama, authorities seized 12 tons of drugs aboard a ship from Colombia bound for Mexico. Military legal sources stated that 250 former Department of Justice attorneys would face trial for involvement in cover-up schemes. China was reportedly planning to block U.S. access to rare earth magnets, escalating economic tensions. George Soros was accused of receiving $260 million from USAID to fund open border agendas. Elon Musk claimed that Tesla's Optimus robot could eliminate global poverty. Insider reports suggested that the flow of information had been contained to protect strategic data, reinforcing the perception that internal pressures remain active. The global offensive unfolded across multiple fronts. The Trump administration consolidated political and legal victories, while military operations expanded in the Caribbean and the Middle East. Israeli officials confirmed the construction of a $500 million U.S. base near Gaza to host thousands of international troops tasked with enforcing ceasefire agreements. The external military siege was mirrored by an internal siege targeting elites and corporations. In Panama, the seizure of 12 tons of drugs reinforced the anti-narcotics narrative. Military legal sources confirmed that 250 former Dodge attorneys would face trial for involvement in cover-up schemes. Analysts interpreted that economic and political pressures would continue to intensify. China's plan to block U.S. access to rare earth magnets added to the economic strain. Reports accused George Soros of receiving $260 million from USAID to fund destabilization agendas. Names like George Lehman and Fernando Henrique Cardoso appeared on influence lists, forming a mosaic of elites accused of global manipulation. Elon Musk doubled down on his tech narrative, stating that Tesla's Optimus robot could end global poverty. Analysts noted that pressure on Hollywood and global elites continued to mount, with investigations underway. The international edition had woven together aircraft carriers, shutdowns, financial scandals, Chinese espionage, pharmaceutical corruption, and technological promises into a single stream. The scenario was presented as inevitable, but also as a prelude to further revelations. The climate is one of rupture. End of the report, folks. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the conversation in the comments. If you'd like to support us directly, consider making a donation using the link in the description or the QR code on screen. Your contribution helps us work better, and keeps this project alive and independent. Thank you so much. And see you in the next report. This content is a narrative adaptation based on public themes of global geopolitics. The version presented has been transformed with a unique style, based on public information, analysis, and opinions, and is intended solely to inform and entertain. Connect the dots.